Selamat petang. Good afternoon. Selamat petang dengan selamat sejahtera. Welcome to everybody's enjoying themselves. Okay. Selamat petang dengan selamat sejahtera, datuk-datuk, datin-datin. Okay. Thank you very much for coming to this year-end event. I am so pleased that you have the opportunity to enjoy this wonderful historic building, as you know, the home of the first semiconductor outside US 10 years ahead of Taiwan. And now we're number 6. Okay? So, something is been missed, as it were, and it's an issue that we need to think about. Okay. So the McKinsey has done a study of what has happened to the AI robotics. And they think that they will add roughly 1 to 1.5% to global GDP growth if we get it right. Okay? Now there's no question there are some economies that will definitely get it right. Taiwan, for example, China is beginning, South Korea is definitely in it, Japan is moving, the US is moving, the others, I'm not so sure. Right? And that's our opportunity. So the value added is roughly $2 to $4 trillion per year. How much is that? World GDP last year, this year's not yet fully counted, $115 trillion. Okay? So roughly, 2 to 3% of GDP potentially from AI implementation, robotics, etc. Now, from an economist's point of view, as this very famous economist said, the technology is everywhere in the system, but I can't capture it in the numbers. For a long time, economists have been finding it very difficult to capture new technology in the productivity numbers. And the reason is that the diffusion is probably slower and the qualitative advances are not captured in the traditional statistics. Okay. So how big is the global semiconductor industry? Right? Already 700 billion. Just the chips alone. Right? And moving by 2030 towards 1 trillion. This is from Semiconductor Industry Association numbers. Now, the very interesting thing, this already, but we see all these big names, maybe Microsoft, Amazon, etc. They're not necessarily Facebook. They're not necessarily here in Penang. But you and I use a lot of them, right? But these giants literally dominate the game. And why do they dominate? Because if you just add up all these numbers, roughly $20 trillion. Okay, the market cap. And they created almost out of nothing because, 10 years ago, they were still relatively small, right? They were significant, but not that, important. But today, just 4 of them spent $400 billion on AI-related capital expenditure. They probably added somewhere between 0.5 to 0.8% of US growth maybe this year. All right, so the actual investments is huge by any standards. Now, you and I know that the US dominates, okay? What is their global share? Now, I'm sorry the numbers don't look very, very well, but that number on the computers is around 34%, the global demand, right? The US share, all right, on consumer electronics, on communications, automotive, government, etc., very big. And roughly by company, half. So US is a huge market, not just as a consumer, but as a designer and driver of technology. And number 2, Korea, Samsung and all the others, Europe 9%, and China only 4.5%. So, the US has technological leadership, but they see the threat on the horizon. Chinese, investments in technology is rising very fast. And 3-4 years ago, when I started looking at the industry, people said China 7, 10, 15 years behind. Today, in certain areas, yes, China is behind. In some areas, they are ahead. Okay, so the game is now, really up for grabs. But in terms of actual cutting-edge technology, the US is still way ahead. But in the actual supply chain production, the Chinese is a formidable force. Those of you who have been to Shenzhen and China, you would see this, right? So why is this? So now, the reason why technology is so important is because it is the leading area in R&D. Almost no other industry other than pharma and biotech spends as much on technology. Okay? So if you really look at all this, the R&D spent by economy, the US 17.7, South Korea 11%, Taiwan 11.5, EU 11, China 9.2, Japan 5.7. These are all the leaders. Okay? So, and Penang benefits from this because almost all the biggest players are in Penang. Right? And so the big issue is this chart from UNCTAD. The blue line is the advanced countries. That dark orange line is the developing countries. The orange line is the least developed countries. And you can see those guys at the bottom are really in trouble because the divide is just getting bigger and bigger, right? And the key question is whether that developing countries, which seem to be in parallel, can catch up. Now, a few of them will catch up. There's no doubt about it. I'm quite convinced East Asia will continue to do well, but a lot of the emerging markets are lagging behind. Now, one of the reasons why we're in deep trouble, and Penang already sees this, and I'm speculating, one reason why our semiconductor strategy is having difficulty coming out is the cost of investment in this area is getting phenomenal, right? So, the headline, you can see this, right? In 2006, which is not that long ago, right? 20 years ago, it cost only less than $30 million to develop the 65 nanometer chip. Today, it costs $1 billion for the 3 nanometer chip just to design, let alone manufacture. One ASML machine, the lithographic machine, is $350 million US. One. And you can't have one because you need a spare part, you need a standby, right, etc. And so you're now talking of a full IDM, integrated device manufacturer, of somewhere between $10 to $20 billion. And Malaysian government doesn't have that kind of money. And no Malaysian listed company has that kind of money. Okay? So at the high end of that market, I'm sorry to say realistically, we're not in the game. It will have to be the big giants, either through the big tech companies or the platforms, like the Magnificent, 7, etc., or government-backed funding. And that's phenomenal, right? So Malaysia is not in that high-end technology business. I mean, I'm being very realistic about this. So the issue now, this is McKinsey, right? They say there are 10 shifts. So I just want to put the big picture in, right? Technology is about 3 things: speed, scale, and scope. I'm faster than you, I'm bigger than you, and I deliver more scope of services than you. Small countries have great difficulty. Small countries may have speed, but they don't have scale, right? And small countries cannot afford to be in everything at the same time. You just have to specialize. So the trouble is, you have to bet hard on AI and skills. Now, Malaysia has a huge advantage because we already have the semiconductors here by stroke of good luck and, great strategic foresight. But we don't have national champions. we rely upon the international, the big multilaterals. And we saw that this year. If Mr. Trump had said anything from Malaysia in the semiconductors out, the big multinational says, bye-bye, I'm gone. I don't have to be here. Right? Whereas if you are, in South Korea and your South Korean companies, you go nowhere. The Taiwan companies are going nowhere. Right? The Chinese companies are going nowhere. Even the Vietnamese companies are going nowhere. They stay where they are because they are local champions. Okay? So the issue ultimately is about people. It's about talent. And Malaysia is very lucky. We already have developed the critical mass in the engineering in selected fields. So the key question now, okay, very quickly, sorry, I'm having problems. So, if you really look at the Silicon North, okay, you would see all the big international names here, which is very unusual. But we are part of the supply chain. And it's not easy, as we've seen, for the supply chain to move, and if anything, they're still coming, because the Europeans are coming, right? And as you know, latest, Tan Lip Bu, who happened to be a former Malaysian, has committed to our Prime Minister to invest, at least 200 billion, I think roughly 200 million US in, reviving the Intel factory here, right? So things, are on track, but the risks are now, the bandwidth is very high. And until we consolidate our talent, because industry move where the talent is. Okay? If we lose that talent, we're not in the game. That part is so very clear, right? So our future depends upon the talent development using AI to ensure that we meet global need for tech workforce. And how big is this? If you look at the right-hand side, which comes from the Semiconductor Industry Association, they need, by 2030, 1 million computer scientists, just under 300,000 engineers, and 110,000 technicians for the US alone. And the gap is probably 1.4 million jobs. So even if we train these people and our people cannot use it, they will definitely guarantee, jobs elsewhere, right? Which is exactly what has happened. Okay? So, we really can have a future in either the technology or the technology education, which is the vision that we have for Wawasan Open University. That's the vision that we have, right? And this is what we want to talk about. Now, AI on the job, what are the workers most exposed? I'm sorry, you can't see that very clearly. It's advanced economies, 33%, right? Share of employment. Emerging markets, less, because we're less developed. And the low income, not that affected. But to a large extent, the less, other than the dirty jobs, a lot of that former middle class jobs are now under threat. You look at all the big S&P 500 companies, every time they announce the news today, AI cut labor, even though they are very profitable. And the reasons they don't need, if in the old days I would think about hiring a research assistant. I don't need them anymore. I just go to, DeepSeek or ChatGPT and I get quite a lot done. I don't even need an assistant to draw the PPT, and the diagrams. I just ask the machine to do it, right? So the jobs are really very problematic. So now this is the chart by UNCTAD, right? The synergies between three key points: infrastructure, skills, and data. And now we come to the AI. These 3 points are very useful. AI is really about three things. It's about the data, it's about the learning models, and it's about the computing power. Now, the computing power depends upon your infrastructure. You must have the energy, you must have the water to run the data centers. Doesn't create many jobs, right? But America thinks that the bigger the data center, the more crunching power I have, I will have a lead for everybody else. The Chinese, on the other hand, think very differently. The Chinese work on the Pareto's law, right? I do it at 20% of your cost, 80% of your efficiency, cukup. I have mass, I'll beat you, which is the DeepSeek moment, right? So the philosophy towards AI is now very different. The American AI model is a open AI, which is supposed to be open, but it's actually closed. That means every time you want more, pay more. The Chinese system is, here's open source. You can copy mine anytime you want, but we'll beat you because we can evolve faster through open competition, right? So now the system is now different values to development. Who wins, we don't know, okay? Who wins, we don't know, right? But ultimately, it really is about how we develop our infrastructure. That's why digital public infrastructure is top priority in these countries. I'm sorry to say, I say this, myself, right? My personal view. Between B and C, C and C is G. If G doesn't work, you can't digitize. That means if you get everything digitized, but last minute you say, oh, sorry, I need this physical signature. It's not digital. Because the weakest point is what is going to slow you down. And if Vietnamese can do it, okay, they can be totally digitized, they'll beat you at the game. All right? So how does Penang, Malaysia map out its semiconductor competitive advantage? And the question that the whole purpose of this conference, do we need a semiconductor or advanced manufacturing institute? Now, this is not just for Wawasan Open University, right? Because, we should have a openly competitive, education resource. We hope to cooperate in Wawasan Open Universities with everybody, and anybody who is willing to contribute. We hope that, those of you who are in industry will be able to help us develop the people for you. And our image today is that no longer are we in verticals. You notice the whole idea of verticals mean you are 5 years old, you go to primary school. After you're 11 years old, or 12 years old, you go to secondary school. After 17, 18 years old, you go to university, right? 40% of Silicon Valley hires do not finish university. If you have done a project before, you know why it costs you to fail, come and join me. I need your skills straight away. I don't look as you of any color, any creed, nothing. Can you help me deliver the project on time, at speed, at scale? Okay? So education is a very different ballgame today. As my MIT professor told me recently when I saw him, he said, by the time the graduate finishes at MIT, 40% of the curriculum is outdated. Right? So, the knowledge is in industry, not in universities. This is the point that you remember. So the university today is only an enabler, an orchestrator, a curator of knowledge to help young people go straight into fit the job. All right? I mean, you notice what has happened. Today, I don't need to use Bahasa because if you've got the same phone as me, I speak in English, you get it in Bahasa, you speak in Bahasa, I get it in English. Language is no longer a barrier, right? Okay? So the amount of change is phenomenal, and that's how we will now begin to sit down. So, So now we will now invite our 5 panelists, each of them who have tremendous skills. Dr. Kewei Yang, please come. Kewei is Chinese, but now an American citizen. He studied in the United States, started his own business, Analogics Semiconductor, made his money, I can say that. And now he's helping Johns Hopkins University and an adjunct professor, but he lives in Penang, and when we met him, we thought, wow, here is a resource that we can, tap onto his brains. Next, yeah, please.
I love the food here.
You see? You either love the food or you get married to somebody from Penang. Okay, next is Leonard Tan. Leonard Tan, as I said, hails from Sabah, educated at USM, is Director, Product Operations Engineering, Dell Technologies, and he leads this software, product operations and innovation, Leonard. And next, Ong Chin Hu, who is a startup himself. He was it Intel? Yes, ex-Intel, right? And he's the founder and CEO of Great ASIC Technology, very much into the chip design. And, he's, in this, startup field, which is wonderful. The youngest of the lot is Mr. Tan Lee Jia, my good friend, okay, who is Penang born and bred, and a creative leader at Riot Games, right? He actually helps Tencent develop one of the top games currently in operation, right? And he has got a lot of insight. Now, he studied not technology, but creative arts. And so the idea is that, you can study any subject as long as your mind is innovative, open, and creative, you can be in the, technology game. Last but not least, Associate Professor Dr. Sian Tan, from Dean of our School of Technology and Engineering Science, Wawasan Open University. Okay, so now I'll start, maybe if I can move down this way, all right? Kawei, maybe just say a few words if you want. You want to sit up here or you want to talk from there? Up to you.
Okay. Okay, yeah, that's better. Okay, yeah, good afternoon. So it's so nice to be here. And I think, as Andrew said, I spent about 30 years. I spent 40 years in U.S. and I spent about 30 years in Silicon Valley. So I had quite a bit of experience of seeing a lot of the companies up and downs, and including companies like NVIDIA, Apple, and all that, right? So fortunately, I had a chance to start my own company in the early 2000s and run the company Analogics for about 15 years, and then sold the company to a private equity fund in China in 2017. And so since then, I ran the company for a few years, and then I retired in 2000, just around the COVID time. So my next chapter is I found Penang, right? I heard about Penang and knew about Penang during my entire semiconductor career, but that was all about back-end manufacturing. Although I never really used Penang, and we can talk about that. It's always the last minute somebody in Taiwan win over the business. But just during the COVID, I found completely the other side of a Penang, the culture, the heritage, the history, and the rich, the food, culinary culture, and it was really fascinating. That was actually the real reason I came over to Penang. Yeah, but as an entrepreneur myself, so I always love to get connected with industry, with the academia, with the government branch, and to see in my spare times of enjoy food and culture and weather, and is there anything I can help? So here we are. Yeah.
Leonard, why don't you say a few words, how you think about the issues, and what are your experience about?
Yeah. I think the introduction already talked about me there, so I don't want to cover too much. But some of them is not written there. Basically, involved from graduated from USM here, Penang, from Sabah. But at the same time, working as an engineer and grow myself to a director. At the same time, I actually, helped to set up factory in China, helped set up a factory in India, and helped set up a factory in Poland. So, seen quite a lot, and of course, I've been in the US multiple times as well. Spent about 3 months there just to bring the factory here in Penang, which is right now in Bukit Minyak. I helped set up that factory as well. So I think it's an interesting topic. I think you mentioned about, and one of the things I'm doing my own research right now as well is, right, when people talk about technology, everybody about AI, about technology, but I think one of the most crucial that we probably almost forget is how do we transfer a tacit knowledge into an explicit knowledge? Because education is about that, right? So we'll cover it a little bit, but I think that is really crucial, and I think what I saw right now with the AI technology, a year ago, if you asked me this question, I say it's impossible. I don't think AI can do that. But we did some research and we did some experiment, and I'm blown away with what the model can do today. It's kind of scary, but it's true, right? And I think that's the reason why all these big companies trying to fight to build their own model, right? Like Google, if you look at Google Gemini 3, I'm a Gemini user. I'm a pro user. I didn't really have to pay. I just got a free 1-year subscription, actually. But at the same time, I also use Copilot Studio in the company, and I see how it evolved really, really fast, and how scary it is. Years ago, when you say you put the data there, they won't understand. You have to train it and stuff like that. But now the model is so smart that even if you put unstructured data, for example, you'll understand what you're talking about. That's how good it is, right? So I think that's what we're going to cover later on. I think it's really important.
Okay. Hey, good evening, everybody. I think first of all, thanks to Tan Sri Andrew for inviting me to this talk, and I'm very honored to be here. I think first of all, I want to declare that I think Dr. Kerwei Yang is actually my mentor for my road of entrepreneurship. So very glad to be sitting on the same panel with Dr. Kerwei over here. So briefly introduce myself a little bit. I was actually graduated from UTM, and then starting my career in actually HP Agilent, when HP Agilent wanted to start their actually semiconductor product group, basically the ASIC design in the early 2000, basically around year 2000. So I started there, and immediately after graduation, actually I went to the States for a couple of years under the HP Agilent sponsorship. So glad to work with the greatest mind. By then, I think early 2000, most of the semiconductor experts are actually in the US. So I was glad that I have the opportunity to directly learn from the expert. And as an engineer back then in year 2000, 2001, spent a couple of years there. And then I started to work for Marvell after the Marvell actually acquired the ASIC business from Avago. So the interesting thing is basically when I got the Avago or now Broadcom share, the stock price was actually, the stock option price was actually $5. So yeah, if I keep until today, it will worth a few million US dollars. So that's the, that's a kind of a joke, right, for everyone, but I didn't keep it until today. That's the interesting point, right? So later part actually in Marvell, I was leading the Asia Pacific ASIC team. So I was building ASIC for different customers across the Asia Pacific, from Japan market, China market, and Taiwan market as well. So I've been doing ASIC design for like 10 plus years in Marvell. I was leading the team and actually leading the team and win the first business in Japan for Marvell, actually. And we have a couple of successful business in Japan. And then after that, actually, I joined Intel doing the IP design. So leading the IP design for the FPGA business in Intel PSG, which was acquired by Altera. And after that, after working for the US companies for so many years, during the COVID time, I made quite a bold move that I actually joined a RISC-V startup in China, which is actually Star5. So actually I lead the entire SoC team for Star5, which is a RISC-V startup in Shanghai. And well, because I know them during my business in Marvell, so actually we set up a company without meeting, because during COVID you can't really travel. So it's a very interesting experience whereby set up the company here, set up the entire team from 0 person to over 100 person in about a year time. So it's pretty fast growth. And we actually deliver 3 chips during the Star5 days, from an IoT chip to a edge chip to a data center management chip at the end. So over about 4+ years experience. And right now this year, because of the overall Malaysia environment, I think we are seeing a great opportunity for startup. So I actually started my own company only last month. Okay, so a great venture. So this is a new start and under the mentorship of Dr. Kerwei Yang. Yeah, okay, that's my brief. So I think maybe I comment on one thing that Tan Sri Andrew has mentioned. My personal view on the semiconductor value chain in Malaysia, right? So one of the area, like Tan Sri has said, I want to give some data point as well. On the certain area, I think we are very, very strong, like OSAT, right? We are actually outputting about 13% of the worldwide output of the semiconductor. But if you look at the front end side, like wafer fabrication, we have a few fabs, right? But wafer fabrication is really a very huge investment. I want to give some data point. I think Tan Sri is a very famous economist, right? And we have Dr. Apuna here, very famous economist as well. So you can see from 2025, TSMC CAPEX is $40 billion roughly. And if you see our PMX, I happened to be in the Parliament of Malaysia during the 2026 budget announcement. So Malaysia government announced 420 billion ringgit budget for 2026, right? So the entire government budget is actually about 100 billion US, if you roughly don't talk about the recent appreciation of ringgit. So really, TSMC, one company CAPEX is $40 billion US, our whole national government budget of 100 billion. So that really means like what Tan Sri has mentioned, I want to kind of echo that. Maybe foundry, advanced node foundry may not be our key play. We may still focus on our existing niche foundry business, like what Silterra, XFAB is doing, like power electronics, MEMS, and so on. That could be our existing play, right? But probably advanced fab may not be our main play because the CAPEX is just too huge. It either has to be the big Magnificent 7, the TSMC, Samsung, or country level kind of investment. So that may not be our play. What should be our key play? Of course, you may say that I'm a bit biased. I'm from the IC design industries. So I'm thinking IC design is where I think Malaysia can actually spend more investment there and actually grow from there. Obviously, another key area is like the OSAT side, especially the testing side, the back-end testing. Malaysia has a strength there. We should continue to grow there. And we have pretty strong companies. Some are already listed companies, like Inari, Kasem, and so on, are all there. So there have been traditional play there. We have to continue to strengthen that area. And advanced packaging is an interesting topic. Maybe we'll later we can talk a little bit more. If there's some time, I can put some of my view to share some on that as well. So yeah, I'll pass to the others, I think, as a start. Thank you.
Okay, hello everyone. Please call me Jia. I'm a Penang boy, raised here till I was 19 before I went to the US and then spent basically my entire career in the US, about 20 years or so. So definitely feel very honored to be here. Thank you, Tan Sri, Andrew, and everyone. Everyone's very distinguished and experienced. I am not about semiconductors, but I can speak from the perspective of someone working in tech, working in games that's downstream from all of this marvelous computing power. And what do these countries, China and the US, I frequent both, what's perhaps their perspective on how to use this computing power to create entertainment and experiences and whatnot. So as Tan Sri mentioned, I'm a creative by training. I was fortunate enough to be born to a family that allowed me to go to art school in the US. So I have a degree in art and specifically entertainment design at the Art Center College of Design in Pasadena. After I graduated, I immediately entered the entertainment industry. My first job was at LucasArts, Lucasfilm, working on Star Wars type stuff as a concept artist, which means it's someone that designs and draws things that goes into computer games. I bounced around at different game companies, different MMO projects, from Korean company to American companies, and then before my current job, I actually joined a small startup in the Bay Area working on the game. Our lead investor at the time was Tencent, and Riot as a company also kind of mentored us and helped us along the way, such that at a career crossroads in 2017, I had the good fortune of joining Riot Games, and as Tan Sri mentioned, League of Legends, Valorant, a lot of games that young people are really into these days were made by Riot Games. Maybe more notably, Riot is also owned 100% by Tencent, and I helped both sides to come together to collaborate on the project called League of Legends Wild Rift, which is League of Legends on mobile devices. So through that experience, I had a lot of exposure to Tencent, as well as how to bring the US to China and China to the US, and how to find collaborative common ground, which is also very tricky in the spicy geopolitics that we have today, but was a very formative experience. After which I returned back to my department of R&D to help Riot to basically start new projects and new teams in our China office in Shanghai, basically making new games. And per I think the theme of AI, I think AI cuts into and permeates every single industry. For someone working in digital entertainment, it definitely is a huge catalyst for change in our industry. And a lot of my work, aside from building creative teams and managing them, is actually figuring out how to bring in AI to achieve greater efficiency or just better results over time. So that's a little bit about my background, and I'll pass it on.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Sean, not a Penang boy, but like what Tan Sri Andrew said, when we come to Penang, could be due to some reason. Wife is from Penang, so he's come back to Penang. But I love Penang. I think looking at the industry perspective, I just share with Tan Sri Andrew. The community is very cohesive, always bring us together to resolve our problem collectively. Right, thanks Tan Sri Andrew and Josh for inviting me, especially for representing the School of Technology and Engineering Science to represent the voice of academic. Is in front of the all academics, industries. Normally, academics is the one is standing very far away. People perception is mismatched from industry, right? We are training some graduate that cannot be ready to market. I think what Dr. Tan Sri Andrew mentioned just now, we should redefine our education position, reposition it. Probably we could share some insight, listen from our panelists, and I would share some of what we are trying to do, right, in this AI and semiconductor era. Okay, thank you.
Well, let me now kind of do a very quick recap of what you've now hearing. Technology cannot be that specialized. It's actually pretty diversified. The very fact that you get a whole, range of different perspectives is very critical. And so really, how do I say we need to be very proud in Penang, right? In 1971-72, when Penang's free port status was being taken away, the chief minister then had the vision to bring these semiconductors here. And as some of you know, I think the famous story was that when the head of Intel came, the car got stuck in the paddy fields of Bayan Lepas, right? And a lot of people were saying, what the hell are you doing here, right? But we built this, and it was built. Now, what does that say? It says everything about talent. It's people who make technology, not technology who make people. So I want to share this with you before I start asking every one of them. I just want to put this in perspective, right? Malaysia has produced two top technology names. Tan Lipu, who now runs Intel, okay? And Hock Tan, who is a Penang Free School boy, right? Of course, we also produce Joe Low. So which goes to show Penang people are extremely creative, right? But the point is, what do they actually bring to the table? Malaysians are culturally very adept. It's because we are a multiracial country, we are very adaptive to new environments. Okay? And to a large extent, these talents, when they grow into a new environment, they succeeded in orchestration of the business. So people tend to forget this, right? Technology is all about orchestration. It's not about you being the best chip designer, you being the best marketing guy, you being the best, manufacturing guy. Somebody has to orchestrate this to get you to work together as a team and to deliver the product on time at the quality that the market demands. So the first point I really want to make to all of you is really the whole purpose of this discussion this afternoon is about orchestration. Okay? And that these people here in this have succeeded because they did the orchestration. Right? All right? And this is the issue. Now, Kerry, so I would like to ask the first question to you. If you coming in fresh from outside, having been in the startup game, what do you think are the strengths and the weaknesses of Penang or Malaysia to start up, let's say, either a Semiconductor Institute or an advanced manufacturing institute?
That's right. Okay. Yeah, so that's a perfect question. So I don't consider, because my history with Penang is less than 3 years, right? So I can't really claim I have too much knowledge of local, but had a benefit of living and breathe in Silicon Valley for the last 30 years. And then also after I started Analogics in early 2000, I immediately opened up my design offices in China. And so I had a benefit of witness and China's semiconductor industry starting from the 2000 to grow, right? So I kind of reflect back of seeing what happened there versus what's going on here and what potentially could go on here, right? So first, a talk about Silicon Valley. I've been in China, I've been doing a lot of business in Korea, I've been in Taiwan, and of course here in Malaysia. Everywhere I go, people saying, we are the so-and-so Silicon Valley, right? But this many decades passed, and in my opinion, there was still only one Silicon Valley, that is in California, right? Why is that? There are many reasons, but I kind of summarize that into like a major 3 pillars for the success of Silicon Valley, right? So one of those is the industry, the supply chain, the sort of ecosystem and entrepreneurship. So it's really the industry. The industry itself has to get into certain threshold of critical mass, right? And second pillar, and I see that is the venture capitalist, the money part, right? So and not only the sheer amount of the investment from the Sand Hill Road, right, and pumping money to the startup companies, but also the way they pumping the money into the startups of betting on the big games, betting on the long games, right? So a lot of times I come to Asia, and I had a lot of experience of investors in China versus investors in the US. And, to be honest, and I see a lot of those sort of a short-term focused investors. But unfortunately, semiconductor is the long game industry. You can't be just looking at the next 3 months, next 6 months, right? So I was talking to Jinghu, and we both agree. And because I've been telling people for the last, 10 years or more, is if anybody tell you, I have an idea, I'm gonna get a chip, get it done, and start generating revenues in 12 months, as an investor, you just run away, because the guy BS you, right? It doesn't happen, right? But you hear that a lot, right? So that basically tells us it's important not only the sheer amount of money, but the strategy, how the investments going in and encourage the startups to really shooting for the big goals. So the third pillar, which is a lot of the main topic here, is the academic and education. In Silicon Valley, you get a benefit of Stanford universities and UC Berkeley and a bunch of other universities, right, in the area. So I kind of look at on the education side is the really a two-piece that is fundamentally and critically contributing to the boom of Silicon Valley. And the one is the fundamental research, right, coming out of those great schools. Another piece is the sheer amount of a talent being created by those academic education institutions, right? And the second part, actually, if I look at Penang, and also today's environment, I think that the second part of a talent creation, just like what Andrew mentioned, is probably even more critical today, right? Because particularly AI, so we're talking about AI. So before I go on, I wanted to kind of just point out when people are talking about, I hear that a lot, that people saying, the AI is becoming really a bubble now, right? Do we worry about this thing is not going to be sustaining? So here's my personal opinion, right? And AI, in my opinion, is very different from some of the other technology revolutions. And many of the other technologies, if people use the comparison with AI with internet. So when internet was developed, and the market needs to actually figure out how to use internet to create new business to make money. That process takes quite a bit of a time, right? But what is AI? AI is actually enrich the human capability. It's really working in the background, right? Increase the productivity. So you see all these big software companies and their profit going through the roof, and then they're still laying off people, right? They don't need to figure out how to create a new business. They already know how to create a new business. And this is the tool, just to make them create the new business faster, more efficient. And so that's why, my opinion, is actually going to be adopted much faster, right? And so, of course, there's going to be a bubble, because anytime when the market grows this fast, and it's going to create a bunch of, the free riders, the people that basically pretend, right, to be the leader, and they will take the ride. But just coming back to the main point is, with market moving this fast, And the knowledge that we're accumulating with traditional education is just not sufficient. So that's why in US you see so many of these startup founders are actually college dropouts, right? And yeah, like Andrew said, this MIT said, by the time you graduate, 40% of your knowledge from regular curriculum is obsolete, right? So that actually make it more critical to actually develop the talent and from the existing, even the existing workforce to actually upgrade them to what is actually needed, right? And so I think we can talk about those topics, and part of the things I was trying to do is, because I'm currently on the Johns Hopkins University's advisory board, so I'm trying to bring in some of the engineering for profession education programs to work with Penang, right? So that part, and so quickly about China. China also, their semiconductor, my own little history. Actually, I grew up in China and in Beijing. I went to Tsinghua University, studied semiconductor in the 80s, early 80s. After I graduate, I get to the Chinese Academy of Science and doing the semiconductor research, but I was very depressed because China's semiconductor industry was so much behind. We were teaching something in advanced technologies. By the time I actually go to the factory, they're still making the discrete transistors, right? So that's why I decide that I need to go somewhere else, right? So I went to US to pursue my degree. So that basically tells how far behind. So there's nothing to be, ashamed of. I think it's very proud, right? China is very proud that they actually came from very behind to today's status. They are basically in many areas challenging the world, challenging even the US supremacy on the technologies, right? So in the early 2000s, and this has actually helped me to kind of think about what we can do here in Penang, is in early 2000, China was really behind in the semiconductor, but a bunch of us, and me included, Analogics, I started the company in 2002, but I look back, there are a bunch of other companies, Spectrum Communications, and RDA, Microelectronics, Montage Technology, V Micro, and all of them start about the same time. And some of them actually started in US, some are just directly started in China. All share the same commonality, is started by Chinese who actually educated and worked in the US. And the most of them was the US venture capital money. And that actually really hyper sort of boosted the semiconductor, particularly on the design side of the sort of the rapid rise of that industry. So if I look at Penang, I mean, I have just the benefit of the last 3 years and here and talking to the local experts here. I see that the great strength here in Penang is that long history of supply chain buildup, the fundamental, and a lot of other countries and say, oh, we're gonna put money, we're gonna build a semiconductor industry, and so coming from the semiconductor background, that is not easy. It's not overnight. It's not somebody just put the money, hire a bunch of young guys, and then you can just turn around to become a semiconductor powerhouse. But Penang has that. Penang has that, right? So that is very different from the early 2000s when I went to China, and it was literally, there was like a land of nothing in semiconductor. Yeah, and so you have to go to the universities to get some of these talents out of university and then train them to become eventually a semiconductor design or manufacturing and experts. And I remember that my first trip went there and I had a chance to visit the SMIC. They just opened, and Richard Zhang, the other day, I was actually sitting here listening to him, because he just started the SMIC, and there was no serious fab before him, right? So that was all sort of the decade. And so coming back to Penang, so we have that strength, and if you, what you wanted me to point out, there are areas that I think we need to, I would rather see Penang to do better. And it is the kind of the leadership, right, that we need. And we had a lot of leadership, Libu and Hawk, but unfortunately they're all on the other side of the ocean, right? So we need them to be here. We need to develop them, or need to encourage them, right? And I think that is part of the job. I think Andrew was pitching the part of the education institutions to be able to do that. And I just want one last point is, on top of all these three pillars, I think another critical thing is the support from the government, the policies, right? Because I kind of compare that. I can't stop doing that. Compare that in early 2000s when we all went back to China. At that period, China was extremely open, right? So we had a zero resistance to get things done, right? And you can bring in talents, you can bring in capital, right? You can do things that is literally, they just encourage you, right? I think the policy, all these things are gonna be critical. I think Andrew mentioned the digital economy, that was part of those things, right? Is you can have all the innovation, but if you have a policy that somehow become an obstacle, that everything stops. So let me stop right here.
Yeah. Thank you, Kawei. That was really comprehensive, straight from the heart, and really give you a very good experience how one thinks about it. So it is really about the cooperation between the state, business, and finance on top of the talent, okay? You can have the best talent, but no money, you can't get there, right? And so, we really need to build an ecosystem. Now that ecosystem is not easy to build, but in Penang and in Malaysia, we have that ecosystem. People tend to forget we have one of the most speculative stock markets in the region. People tend to forget this, that tech stocks in Malaysia have a P ratio of 40 plus. Now, you can say that that's a lot of speculation, but it is a speculation that's exactly happening also. The only thing is how good that technology is, right? Whether that patient capital is willing to do the due diligence. Now, I'm going to open up to the floor because I don't want to, always going up and down. Anybody who feels very strongly on the panel, please say something. Leonard.
Yeah, let me add something. I think I'd like to echo what Dr. Kiwei was talking about. And if you look at, now I'm not entrepreneur like these two guys over here is pretty perfect. I'm sure a lot more entrepreneur here. But I really thought to cover the topic about entrepreneurship. Let me share a little experience. I have 2 use cases, 2 experience, right? One of them is in 2007. I was giving a task to take care of a small lab. And I came up with an idea and said, why can't we make this lab bigger? Why wouldn't we make a global lab, right? Nobody asked me to do that. So to cut the story short, yes, I did. And that opened up 50 engineering jobs in Penang. Right? We moved it out from US or Europe, we moved it here in Penang. That, for me, is entrepreneurship, right? And how, if you look at the second use case I have is, this happened 4 or 5 years ago. I saw an organization in trouble. A manager came to me, you want to take over this role? I said, yeah, why not? When other people run away, I go in there. My previous boss asked me, are you sure? I said, yeah. And the reason is because I saw value in this team. This team actually is the heart of that lab infrastructure that I built. And that's why I say this is very important. When we build the lab, I have an idea thinking about, when everyone talking about developing developers, of software developers, I'm thinking about developing more testers. Because 70% of what we're doing need to be tested. So why are we rushing to do developers when we have to learn something fundamental first, right? This is basically entrepreneurship in my head. And so took over this team, again, by now, what we're doing, we have improved, again, with the help of vibe coding and technology, of AI, our process, our workflow have improved. We automate 70% of what we're doing. Instead of adding people, I'm usually, can reduce people. But instead of, we don't reduce people. What I did was, because we start with what we develop is from the customer point of view, end customer. And then we start from the small and then we grow big, right? And now we're helping my peers. We start taking over what they're doing and help them to reduce the cost. Again, entrepreneurship. But when I look at what I'm doing and I say, hey, let me see what all these great entrepreneurs are doing. They start somewhere. You start from Intel, right? All these companies, like Pentamasters or Vitrox, they start from somewhere. Entrepreneurship. And then after that, they know how to become an entrepreneur. And I noticed this is really powerful knowledge. And those are what I said just now, the tacit knowledge, right? How do we transfer that to be more explicit? But then how we go back again and again and again. I think that's where this institute that, Tan Sri Andrew is envisioning. How do we get the people here, and plus all the mentorship, coach. I'm not talking about sharing IP, right? You can't do that, right? Yeah, can't do that. But at least we build entrepreneurship and then entrepreneurship. We need both, honestly. I think we just don't need entrepreneurship from outside, but within the company, entrepreneurship, if you look in a company like Dell, I have to think, how do I make sure that we have more opportunity in Penang, in Malaysia? Right? How do we do that? So building that lab over there, bring 50 people, of course, other country will feel like, Leonard is taking over a job. Right? They always worry when they heard Leonard Tan's name there now. But I think it's a fair competition that we have to figure it out. We have to figure it out in the institute. How do you develop entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship? That's what we're going to discuss about. Because these are the leaders, and I mentioned this times, we talked about this before, the bridge between, in my opinion, right, I developed my own 4 universal law, I call it, a framework of how developing talent. And the bridge between an innovator and a leader is intrapreneurship or entrepreneurship. Without that, you won't be able to build leader. Impossible. That's my opinion. Okay? But I saw we have a lot of innovators, but we have lack of entrepreneurship, intrapreneurship. And if we don't have that, don't expect leaders to be born. We can't see that. So we need more of that. And I think that is what we also need in the industry.
Okay. Jia, you want to say something? Or
Can I borrow,
Yeah, sure.
sorry, can I borrow Leonard's point to talk about maybe a diversified approach to enabling or supporting innovation? And also, Dr. Kerway was talking about the synergy of the Bay Area and how it creates that innovation. And I also wanted to perhaps comment on that from my experiences. I spent 10 years in the Bay Area as well, working at different companies. And I think one thing the Bay Area does really well, or perhaps US and China does really well today, is almost a by hook or by crook approach. Just as you talked about schools or even governments supporting innovation, you also have Peter Thiel with a fund specifically to encourage people to drop out of Ivy Leagues so that you can chase innovation, and what kind of innovation. So beyond just the money, there's a lot of guiding voices and value add that this entire ecosystem provides to American entrepreneurs or Chinese entrepreneurs. And even though today's subject is about semiconductors, I think, as everyone pointed out, the barrier of entry for semiconductors is so high, capital-wise, talent-wise. There's many downstream industries in tech, especially with AI, where your ability to participate is actually greatly encouraged. The barrier to entry, tools are being democratized all the time. With AI, very quickly a young person with an idea about a great game or a great app could vibe code it in a weekend or something. Granted, I think you still need institutional backing, perhaps partnerships with foreign corporations, be it US or China, and many companies such as Tencent are actually like actively looking for people with that kind of mindset and passion that then also unlocks their ability to come into new industries like Southeast Asia and whatnot. I think a diversified approach towards education and investing in innovation is something that Malaysia hasn't done a great job of. We talk about chasing computing power and hardware largely in service of other countries, but do we actually think about what prospects do the young people have? How do we encourage them to take on entrepreneurship and guide them and support them, especially when the cost to innovation is actually dramatically coming down with AI and other kinds of tech?
Thank you, thank you. Chin-Hu, you want to say something? And then
I
after
would
that,
like
I
to
think Apurva wants
add
to
some
ask a
comment
question.
as well. Sure. So I think from what just now Kerwei was talking about the semiconductor perspective, right, especially from the Silicon Valley perspective, I would like to add on a little bit more from like the local Malaysian entrepreneur perspective. So from the few angles, I think Kerwei was talking about, I think I will comment each of them, right. First, I was saying that I think from a government policy perspective, at least in the last couple of years, we are seeing actually quite a lot of improvement in that sense, whereby government basically with the National Semiconductor Strategy, I think we are seeing that both like Penang State and also especially Selangor State, these two states are really putting more focus into the semiconductor area and giving really some good incentive for the startup company, especially local startup, to really incentivize them to basically really go and innovate and start your business. So that's basically from the government policy perspective, we are seeing that more stronger support and more focused support currently. But obviously, there are still kind of sometimes diverging kind of inputs from different type of agencies and so on, which later I'll comment a little bit how perhaps Tan Sri's idea of Semiconductor Institute can kind of help. I will try to link that later, but I'll try to give a perspective on the 4 pillars that I think Kerwei has mentioned. So the government policy, we are seeing that Malaysia government and the state government are starting to put in policies in place to encourage this area. They are seeing that I think we are doing good in OSAT, but we need to kind of push up the value chain, right, in the more front end, in the design especially. Since I mentioned earlier that, for example, in the wafer fab, that's I think probably not our play as the major investment. So the secondly is really on the industry perspective. I think this is the part that like Tan Sri has mentioned, I think Penang has a blessing. I think we have a very foresighted Chief Minister, Dr. Lim Chong Yu, I think has really pulled in the investors back in 53 years ago, right? Which I cannot imagine. I was not born even back then, right? So all the ex-samurai into Penang, and before everyone in Penang knows what is semiconductor back then, right? So I think that's really a huge advantage, and therefore we have all the supply chain companies in Penang, in Malaysia itself, that is deep-rooted, right? And with that, we actually created a lot of talents, basically, in the various areas. This is our strength, and we need to capitalize on this strength continuously, right? We should not basically forget about this strength. This is a key strength that we need to capitalize on it, right? So later I'll elaborate a little bit more. So the industry, and we are seeing a lot of entrepreneurs, and from especially, you can think about from the OSAT side, from the ATE perspective, the test equipment, the automation side, we have successful companies that are currently listed. And a lot of them actually are mostly, this is by statistic, I think mostly from the HP side or the Intel side. And I'm glad I'm from the both DNA, I have the both DNA. So yeah, that I think we are seeing a lot of successful entrepreneurs there. And right now, I think we want to push more towards the front end. Again, I think on the IC design side, I think we hope that down the road we have more successful companies And one area I think is very interesting, I think Tan Sri mentioned about our KLSE stock market. So I did some calculation myself, right? I'm not a very good economist, obviously. I just do some simple mathematics. I do the entire market cap, Tan Sri. The tech stock in Malaysia only constitute about 10% of the entire market cap. So most of our market cap is really into the traditional business. By no means I'm not saying traditional business is not good, just like the banking, the real estate, the plantation. All this is majority of our market cap. Tech stock, even the 10%, if you really look into it in details, not a lot are deep tech. Okay, sorry to say that at this point, still that way. So that means if you really compare to the US advanced economy, right, about 40, 50%, almost 60% are tech. And you look at Tan Sri's slide earlier, right, most of the top 10 companies, 7 or 8 are actually deep tech, right? So there's a lot of things, a lot of advancement, a lot of opportunities in Malaysia that we can capitalize together with the ecosystem, with the deep talent that we have really developed over the years, over the 53 years, right? By luck or what, like what Tan Sri has mentioned, right? So, or by foresighted, actually, a leader, actually, in my opinion. I really feel very grateful that we have Dr. Lim Chong Yu to be our chief minister back then. Okay, I think this is the second aspect, right, the industry. We have the industry, we have the people, right? The third, obviously, is the talent. And I think, by all means, I'm very proud as a Malaysian. We have actually a lot of talent, be it in Malaysia or in overseas, right? So I've seen a lot of Malaysian, successful Malaysian. I think just now we talked about, I think 2 very successful Malaysian, right? Hock Tan and Lip Bu. In the 4 top semiconductor companies that were Malaysian born, but maybe they are not Malaysian anymore, but right, 2 companies are actually run by Malaysian and very successful, right? So talent, I think, is a key point, but we also have some problem in the talent, right? This is our strength, at the same time, is also our weakness. Why I say so? Right, in the STEM intake, we are seeing that every year this is coming down. So this is the issue, and I think a lot of people have talked about that as well. So we really hope that, I think later I'll try to link with the Semiconductor Institute idea, is basically where Semiconductor Institute probably can play a key role, especially on the talent side, right? So last but not least, the 4th pillar, right, I think Kerwin has mentioned also, is the funding environment. 10 years ago, I really started to think about doing startup actually. Of course, obviously the answer, I didn't do it, right? One of the main reasons is because there's no funding environment in Malaysia for IC design. Sadly to say, 10 years ago, most people don't understand. I tried to talk to the government agency, tried to talk to some local so-called VC, right? So they don't really understand semiconductor. Like what Kerwin mentioned, they talk about, hey, can you give me back my return? When is my ROI, right? Is it 6 months or 9 months? How soon can you return the capital? So if people talk about that in semiconductor, like I think Kerwin just now mentioned, basically they don't quite understand, right? Because to do a chip, to do a product, right? When we look into really IC design, you are talking about really product, not like providing a service and so on. Obviously, if you are providing a service, maybe you can earn money within the first month, right? Profitable within the first month or second month. But that profit, you cannot scale. That is the issue about if you are just doing a service, right? So, but if doing a product, easily you need 2 to 3 years. And that's providing that your product is successful first time right. So, until today, I'm fortunate to say that there are more people understand about semiconductor, including the government side, the private VC, the PE fund, the strategic investors that we have, a little bit more sophisticated, but still, I think people are still asking, can I get back my money in 1 year or 2 years? Better than before, right? 3 months, 6 months. So, but now 1 year, 2 years, still too short, the runway. So, now I'm trying to link back to the Semiconductor Institute that Tan Sri has mentioned. So, if we have a Semiconductor Institute, because this is right where the center of Penang is, right, Georgetown, and if we can have this Semiconductor Institute, of course, I'm from the IC design. I try not to say advanced packaging or advanced manufacturing institute, right? I'm talking about Semiconductor Institute, which is much wider, including the design side. So we can actually pull in perhaps try to influence a government policy, that's from one perspective. And also, because of like Tan Sri has a lot of expertise and a lot of network, we can also educate basically the funding side. I think that's one important thing, because without that, sometimes, again, as I mentioned, I think VC don't quite understand semiconductor. And I'm kind of thinking, hey, I probably need to import some US investor coming in to invest, right? Without doing that, basically you can't go too far. So, and that is the set point, right? Even though we have the industry 50 plus years in Malaysia, in Penang already, but again, we still don't have a lot of people really understand about semiconductor, understand about product company. Ultimately, to be successful, we need to have product company, not only doing services, right? So you need to have product company. So, and that is the thing that I think we are missing. And having the Semiconductor Institute, hopefully we can educate, be a melting pot to really support and exchange idea, educate, have people like Kerway coming in from the overseas perspective, from the US perspective, from the China perspective, to really educate, to really exchange idea, to bring up the level of our local VCs, the investment bankers, the PE funds, managers, right? So that they are aware and they can really put aside some percentage of their fund for this future type of companies, right? Not an immediate traditional business now, which you can maybe expect more immediate returns, right? So that's basically on the funding side. I think it's something we should work upon, because without the funding, even though you have the people, you have the talent, it's very difficult to be successful. Yes, semiconductor is where I think we need a lot of investment, right? So to be successful, right? To do a product, just now Tan Sri has shown, right? I have just developed a 12 nanometer product, tens of million US dollar. It's 100 million ringgit easily, one product, right? So without that kind of funding, you can't do that kind of product, basically. Then you are doing very simple type of product, then you are going to compete with a lot of other competitors, right? So, and more importantly, I think the Semiconductor Institute can obviously do, because this is right in Wawasan Open Universities, and by open universities meaning basically this can actually work on the talent side. This is also very, very important, because the way I see is basically like, for example, in the IC design industry, we tend to hire typically the more top talent, because our mistake is very, very expensive, unfortunately, right? Very, very expensive. One mistake could be set back your project schedule by 6 months or even 9 months now. In advanced process node can be a year and multi-million US dollar, right? So therefore we need to hire the best and the most careful people and more the one that really diligent in it, right? So, and how do we actually create this talent for the entire semiconductor, not only for the design side, but for the OSAT, for example. We are also very strong in the ATE, the EMS, right? Along all these industries, how do we continue to provide this talent? I think very important thing, I see that obviously we have this IPTA, IPTS, right? The public universities and the private universities in Malaysia. Those are doing pretty good. I think we have like PSDC and also like ASEM in Selangor are actually trying to cultivate, train the talent in the semiconductor area. But how does actually Semiconductor Institute do more? I'm thinking it's basically we need to have a Semiconductor Institute that we can actually link not only the Malaysian universities, but foreign, especially ASEAN type of universities, so that we can bring in talent here. Because right now in ASEAN region, the way I see it, Malaysia has a lead still in the IC design area. I'm talking about IC design and especially even semiconductor OSAT as well. But Vietnam is coming up pretty soon, right? And they have 3x our population and a lot younger population. So this is a fact that we cannot change. So how do we continue to do that? It's basically we should also work with the government, hopefully can influence the working permit, foreign working permit policy, right? Our YB from Bukit Mertajam, YB Steven Sim is our Kesuma minister, right? Hopefully we can have link there to really get his help, to really try to lay the foundation, right? How do we get the talent, for example, from Indonesia? We have like Bandung Institute of Technology, Bandung is very good, right? Thailand, a few universities, Chulalongkorn, all these are very good. So how do we actually also get the talent, especially in the beginning, right? When they graduate, because right now we have the visa program for the expat, no issue. That's pretty straightforward. But when we talk about fresh graduate, or maybe graduate with like 2 years experience, how do we actually attract this type of talent so they can really build out our talent pipeline for the entire industry? If we want to grow big, we have to solve this talent problem. I would say that this is a problem at this point, right? Obviously, so I think WOU with like this Semiconductor Institute definitely can put a lot of effort into this and bring this, and maybe in the syllabus side we can share, then we can lead this by creating this technology sharing, because we have a head start in the semiconductor, be it in the IC design, OSAT and so on. We can actually propagate this knowledge, try to attract the talent here, because we have the jobs here. And some people don't want to leave the ASEAN country, right? So that's why we are here, right? Some of us are here because of the food, right? Or the wife are here and so on, the family are here. So we can attract this talent here and build Malaysia to the ASEAN hub of the semiconductor. And Semiconductor Institute could be the answer to achieve that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Chino, that was very, very insightful. I just want to share with you the problem of funding. You know, EU, Europeans, got all the science, got all the money, got all the market. What's the problem? Well, recently, I looked at one study. The application for a grant from the EU, the average cost is 84,000 euro. Just to fill up the form to say, I need this money, costs you average 84,000 euro. That's, what is it? 500,000 ringgit. Okay? All right? I mean, you know, sort of, next. What is the chance of getting that grant? 5%. What does that tell you? You never get a grant. This is why, you know, if you don't have a system that understand how to actually encourage the people at the bottom, how to assess funding, be it a subsidy or whatever, the system doesn't work. Okay? That's one of the biggest problems that we don't understand. We have 17 agencies in charge of SME funding, and you name me one success. All right? Now anyway, the issue is that building ecosystems are much tougher. Now we run into a little bit late, but we still have 15 minutes. We can go a little bit longer. Apurva, you have the opportunity to the first question. Mike, please. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Hello. Yeah. Thanks, Andrew. It's rare that an economist gets an opportunity to ask industry leaders questions on AI and semiconductors. I have 3 quick points, and Andrew, heads up, the third question and the most difficult question is for you, but I am going to ask you in the spirit of honest debate and discussion. So the first one is on semiconductors, AI, and prosperity. You all are industry leaders. And clear that the vibe is so great around AI when I listen to you, when I speak to my friends in Silicon Valley, so on and so forth. In fact, even the macro numbers in the US show that half of America's GDP growth, just in first half of 2025, 50% of it comes from AI-related investments. That's incredible. Bubble or not, that's beside the issue. And here's my question, though. Here's my concern and then the question. But there's a disconnect between this great vibe in the industry and the general populace. In contrast to other tech waves, think of flying planes, radio, television, mobile phones, even the internet. There was a feeling in the past tech waves that the general population was excited about the future that those technologies would bring. This time around is pessimism all around. That is one big difference I see. And this anti-pessimism around AI, in fact, in the US, after China, the anti-pessimism around AI is the only thing that unites both Republicans and Democrats. But that's just an observation. And it's not just about job losses of white-collar workers. I personally think it's about concerns around biased information, misinformation, a lack of control, who's controlling the data, so on and so forth. In fact, Jerry Seinfeld, the famous comedian, had a great line. He said that us humans are smart enough to have invented AI, dumb enough to use it, and stupid enough to not know if you've done the right thing. Okay? So my question to you is, how do you, and as a first question, how do you in the industry see this widening gulf between what you guys do and the general population? So that's the first question. Second question, Kwave, you mentioned that, and I really like the way you said that AI enriches human capabilities. And in fact, as economists, we see that in the data where we find that AI is boosting star workers more than others. Right? So if you are sort of middle-aged with experience, the returns to your experience due to AI is higher than what it used to be, but it's coming at the cost of the traditional model of you graduate from a college and apprenticeship. Right? So Andrew mentioned he doesn't need an RA anymore, and that story is replicated everywhere. So how do you see the future of youth evolving, generally speaking, not just Malaysia, but by and large? Is it what, Gia, is it what you said, that anyone now equipped with AI, because the cost of innovation is so low, has an idea and runs with it? But is that what you expect to see from the millions and millions of youth graduating out, graduating in the real world? So that's the second question. And third question to Andrew is a two-part question. Andrew, you mentioned that Malaysia had a 10-year head start ahead of Taiwan. And linking it back to the holy trinity of what you said about industry, finance, and academia/talent, right? So, Andrew, what happened? How did Malaysia end up losing this 10-year head start? That's part A. And part B, you spoke about how Malaysia has an advantage of diversity and multiracialism. I want to push you on that. I mean, anecdotally, just look at this panel. I see members of a certain gender and of a certain ethnicity, right? But is diversity really what is cracked out to be? So maybe there's a reason all of you here are of a certain gender and ethnicity, right? So, so that is my question to you. Malaysia hasn't been able to harness its strength of multicultural diversity into economic strength like neighboring Singapore has, for example. So why do we talk about this when it really hasn't led to any meaningful sort of change? So let me stop there. Thanks.
This is loaded questions, you know. So I invite the panel to answer, and
Yeah, that was a deep question, right? So it made me think very hard, and I still say, well, you know, I probably don't really have a good answer for it, right? So I try to attempt my just the general feelings, well, as a sort of a semiconductor guy, right? And I do see the AI boom create a huge amount of opportunities for people working in this industry, right? And myself included. And in the meantime, I'm incredibly concerned about the implications of what we're actually building. Just to come, you know, touching this personally, I have two young sons. Both are in the computer science major and just start working, right? I really worry about their career paths because 5 years ago, or not even 5 years ago, basically 2 or 3 years ago, right? So if you have a CS degree, and then you basically have a golden path for the rest of your career and the rest of your life, right? I'm worried, right? So how do I talk to them to design their career path? But in the meantime, I'm helping the company to create this great infrastructure, just disrupt the thing, right? And I mean, in a sense, is you're doing it, and then your benefit yourself from you are in the industry, right? So versus what the outcome that will create and the impact the general population. And I'm not surprised that even my son's generation, they're in the 20s, right? And they're somewhat concerned, and in some ways a bit of depressed at what could actually happen, right? I don't know. This is definitely. I mean, this is really a deep question, because sometimes I'm thinking that this is the question that such a tech industry, and it is not only disrupt the internet disrupts some of the way of how things get done, right? But this literally disrupt the society as we think what it is. But I don't really have a good answer for it. And what was the second question?
The second question, I think it's about talent, right?
Yeah, the future of which you kind of touched upon.
The future of talent.
Yeah.
What do they do?
Yeah, that's that one I don't really have a good answer for.
Please have it there.
I can talk maybe from the perspective of what I see of young people, especially from an industry where we primarily deal with young people. I promise there's hope in here, but it's going to start off a little bit hopeless. I think it will trend towards haves and have-nots, in the sense that what I used to do to come into the game industry, I was a concept artist, so I drew stuff that would go into video games. That path is no longer. It's been replaced by prompts creating images that were trained off of the stuff we created, and we are also actively training the machine to better replicate our abilities, so we're also self-replacing. And that means that people that graduated from my alma mater are having a real tough time. A lot of the Chinese kids that joined hoping for a job in the US are forced to encounter a reality where no US jobs, definitely no US visa. You go back to China and it's still very, very competitive in a frightening way. So unfortunately, I have, because of my tenure, and thus I have access to continued participation in my career. But for every one of me, I think there's very few young people that will stand a chance to have the same kind of career. Ultimately, I agree, this is something that changes society. I think AI is a refactoring of society, actually. But within that refactoring, I think there are opportunities. Let me also maybe talk about an example of Tencent, and I get their perspective quite a bit. So before COVID, they would say, how do they feed their workforce? How do they find the best talent? Typically, the system in our industry is 校招生, which is they go right to the best schools or do a roadshow of schools and try to get the best candidates. Before COVID, they would take what they can get. After COVID, last year, they said even for just art interns at a game studio, they could get people from Beijing University, Tsinghua, top tier universities coming in just to stand a chance of an internship. This year, and this also shows how quickly trends change in China, this year they told me they no longer look for the Ivy Leagues of China. In fact, they go to second tier, third tier cities and schools to basically find people that are super open-minded, super willing to use AI, willing to do anything for that 10-cent job, because in their eyes, an opportunity to have a 10-cent job changes your entire lineage, your entire family lineage, especially if you're very open-minded and great at using AI. So I think even though there's a refactoring where some of these quote-unquote traditional tech jobs may go away or the accessibility might come down, And the youth are very angry in both China and the US about this. But to my earlier point, I think we shouldn't just fixate on one industry or one way of doing things. I think there is a democratization of opportunity and powerful tools for everyone, not to mention that industries change completely too. Once the barrier of entry lowers, everyone then has the opportunity to express your ideas and find commercial application and perhaps success in doing it. In our industry, platforms like the App Store, Steam, have actually blown this wide open, such that if you have the capability to make a game, you can launch it and participate in the profits. And I think AI will continue to allow those opportunities. But granted, I think young people do have it pretty tough and will have many hurdles to jump through. But as long as they can make something super cool, I think they can self-publish and try to make something of it.
I would like to answer the first question first, really quick, give opportunity to the rest. But I think a lot of people are used, especially the consumer, right? We're thinking about AI, it's all about, ChatGPT and, Gemini. This is what we have been told about. So we don't really understand the impact in the workflow, in the working environment. So coming from my perspective as a consumer as well as working, I saw the changes. I saw what it can do. One day when we sit here, there's no human here. These are all panelists, are all AI talking, That's what we're going to become. Because knowledge, like I mentioned just now, that's why I said the importance of those trusted knowledge, if we can manage to document them, right, the AI will learn really fast. The model is super perfect. The way they chunk the data, they semantic index the data is within minutes, right? It's done. You have 100,000 rows of Excel spreadsheet. It takes just minutes to understand the whole thing. And when you ask it just answers you like a human being. So what I'm seeing right now is if you have a workflow, even in education, this is how you learn. Many of those workflows we're going to replace by AI. So you cut down the thing, knowledge is going to be democratized, you learn something faster. And on the second question about the youth, right, that's why I brought up about entrepreneurship. How crucial is that? Because when things become democratized, there are a lot more tool opportunity coming in. The market, the world is going to be very noisy. It's just so many things. Look at how many AI apps you have. Does people know how many you have right now? Probably people just know about ChatGPT, Gemini, Quen. Heard about Quen? DeepSeek, Kimi. You don't hear that, right? There are so many of them right now. I have them in my app. I download everything, trying to test it. But they become noisier. Everybody remember OpenAI or ChatGPT. Why? Because they're the first one. Right? And I think this is what the market's trying to do. Those become the first ones, the one they're going to remember. Right? But recently you heard about Gemini 3.0 launch, and that just shook the entire world because they're the cheapest, the fastest, the better model, from Nano Banana creating image to Veo creating video. I created one and nobody believed that was AI, just by a prompt and adding my picture in it. I sing like Michael Jackson and stuff like that. But my point is, it actually creates a lot of these kind of opportunities, and it depends on the youth to really imbibe this entrepreneurship mindset to think about, humans are very good in one thing, in creating problems. So with problems come opportunities. With opportunity become a business, right? So we create this problem with AI, but I believe there will be more problems around. Even if I look at my business right now, I look at the workflow. I told you we automate 70% of our workflow. We develop all the code locally in Malaysia. For global solution that we provided globally, they're all homegrown in here, right? But 70% of them are developed by, are being automated right now. And we are working on, that is on the development piece of the workflow. And now we're working on the knowledge piece of the workflow. When we look at the knowledge piece of the workflow, we were blown away, where all our data are all fragmented all over the place. Same thing we were doing right now. The Institute is really probably a good place to get those, defrag those data, knowledge, not the IP, don't worry, just the why and the how, but not the what, right? Defrag those, and then share it, and also make it less silo, because right now it's very, very silo, right? But once we do that, and the power of the model that can digest all this information and how fast it creates that information flow, I tell you, the workflow just become things that need a week or 2 weeks. It's talking about minutes to get it done, because the knowledge now moves really, really fast, right? And when I talk about knowledge management, I believe whatever industry you're in, right? They're all about creating data, whether it's to an explicit data. How do you store them? How do you share them, and how do you use them? And this is the area that I believe is going to get really, really powerful if we know how to use it, especially from AI perspective. And there's a huge opportunity in the area that somebody's going to come up with an idea what to do going forward. Sorry.
Okay, I also give some comment. I think Dr. Apurva's question is really, really a tough one. Yeah, and I actually agree with Kerwei also. My son, coincidentally, also studying computer science. Yeah, okay, in the US now. So, yeah, it's quite depressing. I think the way I see it, similar view to Kerwei, but I add a little bit from my own context, right? So, on the top of the hierarchy, I think in the tech field, I think the jobs will maintain. That's my view. And then from the blue collar, like the technician doing, for example, plumbing, all this job, electrician will be there, right? Because this is not easily automated, right? But I foresee, I think, the middle jobs, whereby that sustain a lot of the middle class in the next, don't know how many years, maybe several years to 10 years, will be actually automated or replaced in some way by AI, right? And AI is going through very strongly to merge with different industry. AI is just a vertical, but it's going into different vertical, and right now, actually, it's create a lot of opportunities. Actually, this is what I slightly differ from Kerwei mentioned, although that's why I encourage my son to do computer science. Yes, I think if you can find I told him, my son, right, if you can find another vertical that you can use AI to help to actually democratize it, then you find opportunities, right? So now still have some opportunities, or a lot of opportunities, put it that way, right? But another 10 years, maybe will be less and less. So I don't know whether he's in time or not. He's still in year 1. So Kerwei's son probably have more opportunities, I would say. Yeah, but again, I think this is really a tough problem, especially for you, Dr. Apurva and Tan Sri, as economists, how to help the country, right, be it Malaysia or any other country, to really come up with a policy. I don't know, I've definitely read, I think most of you should have read, like Elon Musk talk about universal income eventually. I do not know whether eventually 20 years down the road, is it really going towards that direction? So there's something up for debate. That's not my expertise, but from a technology view, like what Kerwei mentioned, we are actually trying to ease the human being job, right? To really give everyone more time. But when the extent that we can give you, right now you're working 8 hours or 9 hours a day, now you don't need to work, then eventually what do you do, right? That's probably for economists, psychologists, and so on to really, a socialist, right, to really think about that a little bit more. Yeah, but I personally think with the technology, with the trend today, I think the day will come. But for example, I take for one example, right, autonomous driving, right? So the technology is almost there, right? I have used quite a lot, like I think I'm sure like Dr. Apurva in US, right, Waymo or any other autonomous driving by Tesla and so on. It's actually, the technology is there, right? Just that, of course, you need to have a lot of big data set testing in certain cities, because you have corner cases. And in Malaysia, obviously, it's not so easy, because you have a lot of motorbike and different type of road conditions and so on and so forth. So, but this can be overcome by the technologies. So eventually, for example, if we have autonomous driving in Malaysia, so what happened to our gig economy, right? We have, I don't have the data, how many 100,000 or if not 100,000s of Grab drivers and so on and so forth, right? So this will be definitely a social impact. But from the economy perspective, I'm not an economist, but that definitely create value, right? Because it is the way of people's life and improve the efficiency overall. But how do we actually create other jobs for those people that currently are doing this job? So that's probably a separate problem. I don't have an answer to that. It's a very tough question. So again, I think as I mentioned earlier, I think at the top, if you are creating a technology or merging the AI with another industry, you have a lot of opportunities, like Jean has mentioned as well. I truly believe in that, right? You need to be creative, and sometimes you don't need the technology, because you can find a partner with the technology as long as you are creative, right? You may not be in the tech industry or AI industry, but as long as you have a domain knowledge, you can merge or marry the AI, right, together. But first, you need to endorse the AI. Don't get afraid of the AI, right? And really find a niche and create that before some other people create it first, right? So that is obviously at that level. And then the other level, I have a daughter, I think is not so good in STEM as well. So I'm asking her, maybe do the TVET thing, right? Need to find some niche as well. So do something, right? Be art and so on. So do that. I think that's another area that I think maybe not so easy to be replaced, at least in the foreseeable future, right? So, but nevertheless, I don't have a good answer. It's a very challenging question, Dr. Apurva. So hope you guys as economists can help to really come up with a good answer for Malaysia or for the world. Yeah, thank you.
Tan Sri, you will allow me to do some comment in the educational perspective before you answer the most tougher third question. Yeah. I think it's not only the future youth, even the current workforce, they are facing this dilemma also. That's why I think talent development is come into the picture, whereby WOU can play a role, or we link to the Semiconductor Institute, like what Chin Fu said. Yeah. So this sort of question, whether I can be the jobless when all of these have been replacing, like Alicia said just now, self-replacing. So am I become a jobless also? So that is come into the industry 4.0. A lot of attending a lot of events, even my student ask me, why do I need to study mechatronics? Because I automate the process, then I become a jobless. Right? Why could I make myself this trouble? So I think a lot of debate always there. So I think we come up with a conclusion. Automation, AI make our life easy. But eventually we need to do more high-value jobs. We need to move them into the system level thinking, train them the skill of applying AI tools, right? I think as a famous quote is, AI will not replace you, but the one no AI will replace you. So this is the fact that we need to appreciate. Yeah? Okay, I think our panels just now have give several comments about the those some important elements like entrepreneurships, innovator. Just wanted to add some comment on the national education perspective. Entrepreneurship is always the part of a learning outcome. Perhaps agree with you, it could be still some gaps. There's an opportunity for us in the Semiconductor Institute. And I would like to address also about this talent development. Semiconductor Institute definitely can play an important role on the talent development. Yeah, the PSDC, SM really do a great job on this. And WOU, if Semiconductor Institute can be a complement, we do not see this as a duplication. Because at WOU, in fact, WOU already training the Penang workforce. All our students are working adult, already embedded in the factory and semiconductor industry. Yeah. So they bring the problem into the classroom, right? So we are really considered as one of the most relevant university in the semiconductor and AI, right? I just had a chance to speak to our one of our partner I just recently finished one of our training on the data, really, whether really useful for them, because we really wanted them to have that appreciations, what they have learned that can apply immediately in the workforce, right? Okay, so I think that should be some comment with our strength in the flexibility, yeah, with the micro-credential, yeah. I think micro-credential, those are bite-sized study. Now education system become more flexible, yeah, that definitely can address the grab of the talents. Right. Okay, thank you, Tan Sri.
Yeah. Thank you. Sun Bin, yes. Yeah, please, we'll open up to questions, and then we have to stop, okay? Let's have the questions first.
I think we're here today to talk about, should we do a Semicon AI Institute in Penang, right? So, what can we do first? If we so, what should we do? Now, we already know enablers we can't do. You know, we can't design or manufacture chips and all that. We already know that. Language, we can't do, right? That's a big game. We can only do application, right? So, although I agree the AI industry is essentially a self-consuming industry, it kills itself, you know, it's like harakiri industry, you know, it, like what Chia said, you know, I mean, AI, what he did has killed his job, which he was doing, you know, 10 years ago. So, we know that, but AI will make us great as a society. It will make my company great. It will make, you know, my hospitals great. I'm a director of 2 hospitals. I bought a PET scan recently from China. All the interpretation is now by AI from a cloud, right? Eventually, no doctors, no radiologists, right? Because the AI is going to do better. So it's going to make us great, right? So what we should concentrate on is to bring AI to our people, our society, our companies, and make them great, right? Not to make AI great, to make ourselves great. I think that's the way we should approach it if we want to have an institute. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah, please. The 2, all right. 1, 2.
Hi, thank you. I think that was a very good idea. And my question is, when you talk about Semiconductor Institute, are you talking about technology-wise, or are you talking about policy-wise? So that's the first question. And also, in terms of funding, it hasn't been a binding constraint so far. We've actually wanted to implement Advanced Packaging Technologies Center before in the 2010 Economic Transformation Program. There was funding provided, but it didn't get off the ground because of lack of a customer or off-taker. And we've seen many projects like this happen. Many institutes, like for example, we have CREST, we have MIMOS, we have CIRIM, and all 3 claim wanting to be the E3 for Malaysia. So when we want to create another institute, we also need to look back and see why, what happened to these other projects, like why it failed. And personally, my learning after doing some research on this, I think a good institute that actually was successful is PORIM, which is now, I think, MOPB, is the Malaysian Palm Oil Industry Board. So, and I believe the reason why it was successful was because it was industry-led, industry-funded. Because, not to criticize the Malaysian government, but it's also a problem that's faced by governments worldwide, especially when you're moving from middle-income country into high nation status is number 1. Like what our panelists said just now, you don't really have that capacity. I mean, we have a lot of scientists, of course, working within government, but no one with that industry knowledge be able to make those commercial calls for you to say, okay, I support this project, I don't support this project is technologically good for Malaysia or not. So we don't have that capacity within government. So to wait for government to get that capacity, you probably wait for a long time, which is what has been happening, right? We've been waiting for a long time. So I think industry needs to start to work together. And it's very difficult because right now, if you see all our OSATs in Malaysia, the market cap combined, it's like maybe 1/30th of one of the large OSATs in Taiwan. So how can one OSAT get into advanced packaging by itself? So you really need to combine, because the future is a competition between supply chains. It's no longer a competition between single companies. It's you and your gang of suppliers, whether you can work together to, develop next frontier technologies. So I think it's a great idea, and I think it should be industry-led, and then, and government can participate when it feels comfortable. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a very, very good insight. We're not asking the government for any money, by the way. Okay. That's, any other question? Yes, I think it's
Thanks.
Dave and then Salva.
Thanks. Thanks, panelists. I think I understand here. I think I have both of comments and questions. So I think the first comment, right, was actually about 10% technology company in Malaysia. And Malaysia has been sort of focused on traditional, but it's something that we have to understand the traditional. Do we have enough buffer for economic resilience? We learned from Asian financial crisis and all that. And Maybank, the first quarter, first 9 months, they make about 7.94 billion in terms of net profit. And then that's actually, I think this is something that now we actually want to solve the technological AI, semicon investment. But I think the underlying is that, do we have the policy, and the policy actually come from people who actually understand the interrelated and different dimension of things at play. So it goes back to a very fundamental question, is that our economic fundamentals, is there structural challenges here? The ecosystems? I mean, it goes back to Leonard and Chia was talking about the entrepreneurship, right? If you think about how education is being done in Malaysia or in Penang, isn't it all the parents actually encourage the kids go to study good grade, get a good job? That's pretty much. No one actually encourage you to run the business. And entrepreneurship is sort of like something new because of Zuckerberg. So I think the fundamental question is that for all these policies to work, Malaysia have a national AI office. So if we're going to solve this problem, right, how are we going to align with these things? And then yesterday I was actually at PSDC. They invest Penang, 118 billion is on EE, semicon, packaging, all that, right? Do we want to diversify in terms of not, we talk about, we want to do the design from the value chain. So, for example, I'm not sure what's your comment, we actually paid for ARM. Is it sufficient? Or is actually we're paying for 1 billion ringgit for an old technology itself? Is it too much noise? Are we focusing on what are the real questions and we should be focusing on an energy and discussing about that and solve the problem? Or we're actually focusing a lot of noises around? People talk about AI, but specifically, are we talking about Gen AI, like you guys said about that earlier? Or are we talking about agentic AI, or physical AI, or even AGI? So what exactly that when we talk about AI? Because I don't think a public, general public actually understand AI, because AI to them is ChatGPT. And just like Gemini 3, when it first launched, right? OpenAI lost about 12 million subscribers. So, it goes back to the gentleman was talking about that. AI is good, but what's the application? Can we utilize AI? Can we be also the creator of AI, and not just user, but apply that to actually value add in terms of the businesses or even ecosystem in Penang? I'm from Penang, so I'm a bit biased. On Penang, Malaysia overall. ASEAN, it's a different story. Even though we're as a bloc, what is our comparative advantage? So I think maybe you can share the Semicon, the company itself. What do you really want to see how to actually work, in terms of policy, in terms of...
And, okay, I think we also mentioned about Vietnam having 60% young people and all that. I mean, I was just in India, a couple of months, 2 times in India, all right? And they are actually moving into OSAT big time. So India is very good at front end, I mean design part, AI in terms of software. Their missing component is manufacturing, all right? And the incentives that they're giving, I mean government, we talked about government just now, the incentives are actually mind-blowing, right? So basically 50% comes from, I mean, let's say you're going to invest 100 million, 50 million comes from the government. State government can be anywhere between 20 to 25 million. So 75% of your investment, no strings attached. They are so into this. So if we are not careful, I'm talking about Penang, not careful, so we may lose that 13% market share that we proudly are saying that we've been having for 50 years now, growing into 50 years. Okay. That being said, what we need to do differently to add on, right? I also had a lot of talks with the investors there, like CG, Micron, and all that. When I talked to them about automation, they're not interested, right? Because, hey, I need to get the factory up and running. And the statement that kind of woke me up was, people are cheap. All right? And this is what I heard about Penang 35 years ago when I first started working. People are cheap. All right? So what we need to do to continue the supremacy of OSAT, we need to do a lot of automation. That's the way I look at it. In terms of AI, we are talking about this Semiconductor Institute. We should be calling it probably Advanced Semiconductor and AI Institute instead of calling it just this. But again, we have so much of fragmented energy going on, right? We have PSDC, we have the 5-kilometer range, we have CREST, we have MSIA, we have all kind of things. But let me tell you, it's not focused, not laser focused. So if Penang need to be doing this, all Penang State plus all these agencies should come together. And another big opportunity, I mean, those people who are here, I would say is, one thing that struck me, we were in Gujarat, right? We were talking to people there, and they have a lot of money. They are the kind of Jews of India, right? They have so much of money. And what struck me was, when they talked to me, we were talking about, we are making equipments and all that in Malaysia, right? We are talking about semiconductor. We want to do cherry picking, meaning that equipment which are the best in industry, we put together and probably make a OSAT factory. But these guys said, I got money, I want you to do turnkey. And we were like, turnkey? You mean what? All the equipments, come and set it up for you? So that kind of told me that, hey, opportunity, right? If companies in Penang was so good in all these things, come together instead of competing, we have a big opportunity to serve somebody else. All right, so don't only look at Penang as a resource towards improving other areas or other part of the world and make ourselves better, while putting AI in the forefront, using it to better ourselves. I think that is just wanted to share with you guys. All right? Thank you.
Thank you, Vasu. Now, unfortunately, time is of the constraint, so I'll just answer the elephant in the room, which Apurva has thrown a grenade. The question really is, if I may summarize you, Apurva, is why did Penang, 10 years ahead of Hsinchu, end up being number 6? So is this a political question or is it an economic one? And then, of course, the sensitive issue is it an ethnic one? Okay? Now, I've reached the age when I don't really care about whether I'm politically correct. But it's an economic one. Malaysia, being a former colony, suffers the same problem as Britain. Why did Maggie Thatcher inherited a massive oil and gas endowment, put it this way, blew it completely so that Britain is on the way down? Resource curse. Malaysia suffers from the same resource curse. If we just turn on the tap, the oil tap, or the palm oil tap, or cut down timber, why the hell do we need to devote 15 years PhD to pursue something that we not even sure is going to succeed? Simple issue, right? So a lot of people think that this is a political question, it's an ethnic issue. People tend to forget that this is an urban-rural divide in which the rural population in less than 50, 60 years has moved almost half to urban. This is a huge sociological challenge in which maybe the government has tried and has not, succeeded, right, in fully in its ways. But I want to point back to Apurva, since he's from the World Bank. You need to ask a fundamental question. Why is it that East Asia succeeded in export manufacturing and technology, whereas Latin America, Africa, Middle East, Central Asia did not succeed? Answer, no resource curse. Northeast Asia had nothing except people, only rocks, right? They were starving. I mean, to a large extent after the Second World War. Now, then you ask another question, right? Why is Japan suffering, whereas Taiwan, Korea, and China are not suffering? The answer is they are ruled by engineers, and the Japanese are ruled by amateurish British, the typical British thinking. You send somebody to University of Tokyo as law, and you can run the whole country. Right? I mean, you really think about it, you need an engineer to develop an engineering industry. You can't have a politician who thinks that I just want an engineering industry. That's what's happened with Gujarat. I got money, give me a turnkey. We can do exactly what Mitsubishi did to our Proton. Sell the second-hand plant at a very high price and tell them this is high-tech. Right? And we have a few factories in Malaysia to do this. But that is not about technology. Okay? So what we're really suffering from this country is the elephant in the room. We have not had a proper conversation between industry, right, rural areas, academia, and the politicians. We never had this conversation. Everybody just point, you, me, oh, somebody else must do it. Ultimately, industry that makes money, why is it that Penang, one of the richest cities in Malaysia, did not invest back in the tech industry? And the answer is knowledge. The reason why the Taiwanese invest back in the industry, they had nowhere else to go. You see, so to a large extent, we really need to have a proper conversation, a very frank one, okay, to say, look, this is not about you or me or whatever. Now, the point about what we want to do in this debate is really this issue. What I find so encouraging about AI is that we don't even need STEM to study AI. We don't need STEM. We don't need Bahasa, we don't need language. The AI will help you. Right? Anybody who is creative can use AI. You don't need special coding now. You don't even need coders. Right? If you are graphically very creative, you go straight into actual, creative arts, right? And digitize it. Okay? So to a large extent, small countries now through AI, the democratization of innovation, can make it, but you will never make it if you think like Chong Wei. If Chong Wei said he could not beat Lin Dan, he would never beat Lin Dan. The reason why he beat Lin Dan was he lost and was sanctioned, and then he, at the age of 34, when most badminton players would have given up, he said, I'm going to beat the guy, and he beat the guy. So my point to you is this. If Finland, which has less population than Malaysia, can produce Nokia, why can't Malaysia? We really should not think that, it's just only the big boys that can do it. We can do it. We did it before. I mean, Chong Yu had the vision to be able to say, let's invite the Seven Samurai here, and we did create something out of it, except that maybe we had not taken it to the next level. And so the issue is, let's not blame anybody else. Let's do it ourselves, if we can. Now, whether we can agree or not, that's another issue, right? So my point just to summarize, this afternoon we've heard a lot of sharing from all of you. We realized that creation is actually co-creation. We need to share in order to exchange ideas so that everybody benefits. The danger of success is that they forget why they became successful. The rich should help the poor, and that's the first principle of zakat. The whole idea, if you make it rich, you must help the poor. But a lot of people who got rich never remembered. So to this extent, what I really want to share with you is that knowledge is human. And if we have that humility to be able to share it with everybody, which now AI allows, we could create, Penang, really make Penang great again. Okay, sorry to use Trump. Thank you so much for coming. Let's break for tea and we can have a good discussion. Thank you. Thank you all the panel, right? Yeah. Let's take one for